Guys, I'm going to show you a very interesting chart in today's video, and I can tell you already right now with 100% certainty that no one else is talking about this and that no one else actually is busy with this, because half of the people looking at this chart, they actually think that I'm cuckoo. Not completely 100%, but yeah, I just have a really weak spot for esoteric subjects. And yeah, guys, today we are going to have a look at a cycle which is very accurate in irregular financial markets, which is based on the north node of the moon. And yeah, let's just jump straight into it. Guys, if you like these videos about planets and cycles, make sure to drop a thumbs up. I'm going to start directly with the following statement, guys, and that is that Lewis McWhirter is rumored, because that is the founder of this cycle, is rumored to be William Delbert Gann. Nobody knows Lewis McWhirter. It is a fake name probably that made a publishment about the 18.6 year cycle, but the rumor goes that it might be William Delbert Gann, who was one of the most successful traders out there, and he was known to use planets into his analysis. So guys, what is the 18.6 year cycle? Basically, where do we get that number from, right? Well, if we have the Earth has the equator, and if you would extend the equator, you would get the ecliptic plane. Then you have the moon is turning circles around the Earth and is meeting that ecliptic plane 2 times. Once it hits, it's the south node, another time it's the north node. But these south and north nodes around the Earth, they are actually dynamic, so they are turning very, very slowly, and they're turning completely, and you guess it, in 18.6 years. And basically, the north node, that is the most important one. The north node is going through the constellations. And while the North Node is going through the constellations, it tells us where in this business cycle we are. And it starts over in Aquarius, going into Capricorn. Aquarius is the low of the cycle. Leo is the high of the cycle. That's basically the most important thing we need to know, right? And then I started to analyze this cycle, and I started to think like, okay, so if we go to the regular financial markets, we can see, for example, that the North Node was in Leo right here at the top of the dot-com bubble, right? So I was like, okay, that's interesting. Then right here at the low of the next low, major low, the North Node was in Aquarius. So I was like, okay, that's interesting. Let's have a look at some more examples. So I started to look at more examples, and then I got a little bit confused because it was super accurate at the dot-com bubble, but at other cycles it was a little bit less accurate. So I was like, okay, what is going on here? Then I started to think like, hey, but we haven't taken inflation into consideration, something we do often right here on the channel. So then I did that. I looked at the SP 500 divided by the M2 money supply, and I checked when the North Node was in Aquarius and in Leo. And guys, what we're seeing is actually kind of crazy, because if we scroll back right here in the history of the S&P 500, let me scroll back, we can see, for example, in 1962 we were at a top. That was the peak of the business cycle, because the North Node was in Leo, right? The North Node was in Aquarius right here in 89, was also not the best times of the markets. But I gotta tell you, this is a doubtful moment, right? Because we are not exactly at the low. It is slightly after the low occurred that we've entered the North Node in Aquarius. But you gotta see it like this as well. Once the North Node is leaving Leo again, we're actually going into the declining phase of the business cycle, marking the low in Aquarius. And although it didn't mark the low exact, it shows a little bit the direction of the market. And I thought this was actually very interesting, because the next top was, of course, exactly at the dot-com bubble top. Then the next low in Aquarius was when we had that low in 2008, 2009 with the fall of the Lehman Brothers. So as you can see, this is way lower when you look at inflation. And that second peak, what we've seen in 2007, 2008, came not even close to the peak at the dot-com bubble. Even more crazy, guys, we haven't seen levels like the last time the economy was trading at this level took like 23 years ago. So that is super crazy. We haven't seen in the last 23 years, we haven't seen the regular financial markets breaking this level. And the crazy thing is, guys, is that the North Node already surpassed in Leo. Right now is going into the direction of Aquarius, and that will be, hold your horses, guys, that will be in 2026. But why is 2026 so interesting? Because when we have a look at Bitcoin at the 4-year cycle or at the 16-year cycle, they both point to a major low in 2026. And this cycle does the same thing. So that's like, okay, that is just interesting. And the North Node was in Leo right here. Actually, when Bitcoin's bull market was in 2017, 2018, that was when the North Node was actually in Leo. And that also made me wonder, like, okay, how is that actually working when that would be the peak of the business cycle? But actually Bitcoin went to higher levels, right? More liquidity entered Bitcoin. Less than you would think. I will show that later. But it just made me wonder, like, okay, the peak of the cycle was when Bitcoin was in 2017, 2018. And that bull market was crazy, by the way. I was there. I lived that bull market. That bull market actually fired me into a full-time crypto job. So it was a crazy time, but it's crazy when you look at the data from that time, guys. You can actually see, for example, the Google term Bitcoin price. I mean, everyone Googles Bitcoin price. Like, what is Bitcoin might be less Googled right now than back then, because now more people know what Bitcoin is. But everyone wants to know the Bitcoin price. And the Google searches for Bitcoin price were the highest in 2017. Another thing I want to show you guys is the exchange volume. And if you would look at the exchange volume on a one-day chart, then yes, we did have higher spikes in the previous bull market, but they were very shortly lived. If we take an average of 7 days, a 7-day moving average, then you can actually see that the most volume of Bitcoin was actually being traded, yes, you guess it, 2017, 2018, that top. So that is kind of crazy, right? And yeah, so that means that these two charts basically show that the most mania, the most hype was actually around 2017. And I would argue that 2017, although the previous bull market was crazy, guys, don't get me wrong, I loved previous bull market and we had a crazy time and Bitcoin just saw a nice spike in prices, I would still argue that the bull market of 2016 and 17 going into 2018 was even bigger in terms of feeling. Even more people were busy. And this is actually, if you look at the Bitcoin BLX chart, divided by the money supply, right? And you can already see I drew the 16-year cycle right here. We can see that right here, the North Node was in Leo. And this bull market, if you take, for example, this top right here, and that top, there's a massive distance, right? A massive vertical distance. But if we have a look at from this top till this top, there's not much vertical distance in there. So I would argue that the next top that we are going to see will even have a less vertical distance, right? It might surpass the previous all-time high, but I don't see this chart going super high. And don't get me wrong, because the other Bitcoin chart can go higher. That really depends on the amount of money that is being created, right? If right now the US dollar supply, circulating supply is increasing by 10 times, yes, Bitcoin can go to 2, 3, 400,000 US dollars. But it doesn't mean that you remain the same purchasing power, right? So I'm also looking at a way of purchasing power. And yeah, if the US dollar circulation is like tenfolding right now at this specific moment, then yes, we won't see that. So guys, if the US dollar supply would like double overnight, then this chart would go down, because it takes this dollar supply into the equation, right? That's why this chart is so interesting. And I think, guys, we can still see something like... So, guys, it's very interesting that this cycle actually shows us, together with the 4-year cycle, together with a 16-year cycle, that the next major low is in 2026. And I think that would make a lot of sense, right? And I would also argue that this cycle might tell us or might strengthen the argument that the high of Bitcoin won't be that high if you take inflation into consideration. I think that definitely makes sense. You heard Benjamin Cowen probably talking about diminishing returns. I think this is also evidence that we do see somewhat of diminishing returns. Yeah, guys, that was it for today's video. I hope you all enjoyed it, guys. I'm going to drop more information about this. If you want to stay connected with me on this subject, make sure to subscribe down below. If you like these videos about these cycles, which is just quite unique, you know, because no one really talks about this. And I have to say, honestly, it cost me a lot of research to do these things. I'm reading a lot of books. I'm researching a lot of things on the internet. I already have a lot of experience since I'm in crypto since 2016, and cycles was already early on something that really touched me, that really grabs my interest. If you like this content, make sure to leave a thumbs up, guys. If you want to stay connected, which I would highly recommend, make sure to subscribe down below and hit the bell icon so you get notified whenever I upload a new video. Guys, I want to thank you all for watching. Special video, and I wish every single one of you a beautiful day, and I hope to see every single one of you in the next video.